The morning started like any other. I was in our modest kitchen, brewing coffee, when James strutted in, his best suit pressed to perfection. A smug smile stretched across his face. Something was different, a certain arrogance clung to him, thick and suffocating. "Sarah, we need to talk," he announced, adjusting the brand new Rolex on his wrist, an extravagant purchase I hadn't questioned. I should have. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "What's on your mind?" I already knew. The late nights, the whispered phone calls, the sudden obsession with his image, it all pointed to one inevitable conclusion. "I'm leaving you for Emily," he said, as if delivering fantastic news. "She's the CEO of Morgan Industries. Unlike you, she's actually going somewhere in life. I'm tired of being married to someone who has no ambition." I set my mug down, hiding my smirk. James had always prided himself on his intelligence, but his ambition was matched only by his ignorance. For 5 years, he had believed he knew everything about me. The truth, he didn't know the first thing. "Emily's different," he continued, pacing the kitchen with theatrical gestures. "She understands the corporate world. She's not stuck answering phones and filing papers like you. Do you know she made over $8 million last year?" I tilted my head. "Is that what she told you?" He scoffed. "I've seen the reports, Sarah. I'm not an idiot. She's shown me everything, the company's financials, her personal accounts. She's offering me a position as vice president of operations. Can you imagine? Me, a VP. Oh, I could imagine it quite well. After all, I had been the one to suggest to Emily that we might have an opening. Of course, James didn't know that. Just as he didn't know that Emily Morgan, the so-called CEO of Morgan Industries, was merely its public face. The real owner, that would be me. 10 years ago, I inherited Morgan Industries from my grandfather, who built it from nothing. Before he passed, he gave me one piece of advice: if you want to run a company well, you need to understand it from every angle. So I did. I worked my way through every department, learning the business inside and out. By the time I officially took control, I made a decision: stay behind the scenes, let someone else be the face of the empire. Emily played the role beautifully. I just hadn't expected her to fall for James's tired charms. "When are you leaving?" I asked, more curious than concerned. "Tonight." He checked his watch. "Another gift from Emily, no doubt. She's sending movers for my things. We're moving into her penthouse downtown." My penthouse, actually, one of many properties I owned. "I see." I rinsed my mug, keeping my expression neutral. "Well, congratulations, James. I hope you find what you're looking for." He hesitated, caught off guard by my calmness. "That's it? No fight? No begging me to stay?" I raised a brow. "Would you like me to beg?" "That's not," he huffed. "I just thought you'd care more." "I do care," I said, drying my hands, "just not in the way you expect." The familiar look of condescension crossed his face, one I had endured for far too long. "This is exactly why I'm leaving," he said. "You have no fire, no drive. You're perfectly happy being a secretary for the rest of your life." If he only knew. For the past 5 years, while he assumed I was shuffling paperwork, I had been expanding Morgan Industries into a global powerhouse, doubling revenue, acquiring competitors, reshaping industries. "You know what your problem is, Sarah?" He adjusted his tie, warming up to his own speech. "You're afraid to take risks. Emily, she takes what she wants. She's a real businesswoman." I smiled, thinking about the board meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. "You might be surprised by what I'm capable of, James." He laughed, a grating sound. "Right, well, I have to go. Emily's expecting me for lunch. We're finalizing my contract." He paused, then added smugly, "Don't worry about the divorce. Our lawyers will handle everything." Our lawyers? He had no idea the firm Emily recommended was already on my payroll. As he turned to leave, he hesitated. "You know, I did love you once, but people grow, they change. I need someone who can keep up with me." I met his gaze, steady and unwavering. "I understand completely." I walked him to the door, watching as he stepped out of my life, completely unaware that he had just walked into the biggest mistake of his. "Good luck, James." He'd need it. He gave me one last patronizing smile before walking out, convinced he was leaving me heartbroken and alone. Little did he know, he had just walked straight into a trap of his own making. I waited until I heard his car pull away before picking up my phone. "Emily?" Yes, he just left, time to set everything in motion. The next morning, I arrived at Morgan Industries early, settling into my usual spot at the reception desk. James strolled through the lobby minutes later, nodding at me with the same condescending smirk he always wore. He was dressed in a sleek new suit, likely purchased with the company credit card Emily had given him. Right on schedule. My phone buzzed. Board meeting in 30 minutes, everything's ready. I took a slow sip of coffee, allowing myself a small smile. James had no idea he was about to learn the true meaning of ambition. The boardroom at Morgan Industries was as grand as ever, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a polished mahogany table stretching the length of the room, state-of-the-art presentation screens lining the walls. James sat near the head of the table beside Emily, practically glowing with self-importance. I entered quietly, taking my usual place in the corner, where I typically took minutes. James didn't even glance my way. To him, I was invisible, just another fixture in the room. Emily stood, commanding the room's attention. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin today's agenda, we have an important announcement. James straightened his tie, his smirk deepening. He was ready for his grand moment, completely oblivious to what was coming. As you all know, Emily continued, Morgan Industries has undergone significant growth and change. Today, we have a special guest joining us. She turned to me. Miss Chen, would you like to take over? James frowned, looking between Emily and me, confusion clouding his expression. I rose from my seat and walked to the front of the room, standing tall. Thank you, Emily. My voice was steady, authoritative. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Chen, owner of Morgan Industries. The color drained from James's face. His fingers clenched the arms of his chair, knuckles turning white. Some of you may know me as Sarah from reception, or Sarah from HR, or even Sarah the secretary. Over the last 5 years, I've worked in nearly every department of this company, learning it from the ground up. I clicked to the next slide, our latest quarterly financials. Under this management structure, Morgan Industries has achieved unprecedented growth. Our global expansion has exceeded all projections, and profits have doubled in the past 3 years. James sat frozen, his mouth slightly open, struggling to make sense of what he was hearing. I saw the realization dawn in his eyes, the late nights, the filing I was always catching up on, the business trips Emily conveniently took before major company decisions, the way employees at every level seemed to respect and defer to me despite my supposedly lowly position. I turned to the next slide. However, recent events have revealed some concerning behaviors that need to be addressed. The screen filled with a detailed breakdown of expense reports. James's eyes widened. He recognized them immediately, his new suits, the Rolex, the luxury dinners he had enjoyed on the company dime. Emily remained composed beside him, her expression unreadable. Morgan Industries takes financial misconduct very seriously, I continued. These unauthorized transactions violate company policy. Effective immediately, the individual responsible will be removed from their position and barred from any further association with this company. James's face paled. He turned to Emily, as if she might intervene. She didn't. She merely folded her hands in front of her and said, Security will escort Mr. Parker from the building. James shot to his feet, voice rising in panic. Wait, Emily, you can't be serious. You said, you promised. Emily barely spared him a glance. I promised you a position, James. I never said how long it would last. 2 security guards stepped forward, waiting. James turned to me, desperation creeping into his expression. Sarah, please, this is a mistake. You can't do this. I met his gaze, unwavering. Good luck, James. And with that, security took him by the arms and led him out of the boardroom. I turned back to the table, adjusting my notes. Now then, I said, let's get back to business. I nodded to Emily. She had played her role perfectly, right down to the recent operation that exposed corporate espionage and fraud. With measured grace, she stood and stepped away from James, putting a deliberate distance between them. Mr. Chen here has been attempting to gain access to confidential company information through, let's just say, unconventional means. She placed a thick folder on the table, flipping it open with a practiced ease. Every conversation, every promise of position and power, every attempt to breach restricted data, documented. James shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is insane," he sputtered. "Emily, what are you doing? We had a deal." Emily's expression remained calm, almost amused. "No, James," she corrected, "you had a deal with the person you thought I was. My real loyalty has always been with Morgan Industries, and Sarah." I watched as the realization hit him like a crashing wave, his meticulously crafted world fracturing before his eyes. He turned to me, desperation creeping into his voice. "Sarah, you can't, this isn't." "Can't what, James?" I interrupted, my voice steady. "Run a multi-billion-dollar company, make executive decisions, keep up with your ambitions?" I let the words sink in, watching the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "While you were busy looking down on me for being just a secretary, I was running this company." The room was silent, save for the barely concealed smirks from the board members, people who had known the truth all along, who had worked with me behind the scenes while maintaining the illusion for security reasons. I clicked to the next slide on the screen. "Effective immediately, you are terminated from Morgan Industries. Security will escort you from the premises." 2 guards stepped forward, their presence making it clear there would be no discussion. James's face flushed a deep red. "You can't do this," he snarled, his voice rising with anger and humiliation. "I'm your husband." I didn't blink as I slid another folder across the table. "Not anymore." James hesitated before opening it, his hands trembling as he scanned the contents. "These are divorce papers," I confirmed, "filed this morning, given the extensive evidence of your fraud and attempted corporate espionage. I doubt you'll want to contest anything." His head jerked up, looking between me and Emily, as if searching for an escape route, but there wasn't one. The weight of defeat settled into his shoulders. A security guard stepped forward. "Mr. Chen, please come with us." James didn't resist as they led him toward the door. Just before he disappeared down the hall, I called after him, my voice even. "Good luck, James." Then I turned back to the board, adjusting my notes. "Now," I said, "shall we get back to business?" That evening, I sat in my real office, the CEO's suite on the top floor, watching the city lights flicker like stars below. Emily knocked lightly before stepping in, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Well," she said, handing me one, "that went even better than expected." I took a sip, savoring the crisp taste. "He made it easy," I said, "his ego was always his weakness." Emily settled into the chair across from me, studying me thoughtfully. "Still," she mused, "it couldn't have been easy, letting him dismiss you all those years, knowing the truth." I considered that. "The funny thing is, he always talked about ambition, about being something more, but he never once tried to understand the business itself. He just wanted the title, the office, the power." Emily smirked. "And you?" I glanced out the window, where the city stretched endlessly before me. "I wanted to build something real. My grandfather taught me that true leadership means understanding every part of what you lead. That's why I worked in every department, why I stayed hidden. I needed to see the company for what it really was, not just the version people show a CEO." Emily raised her glass. "To building something real, and to men who underestimate women in the workplace." I laughed, clinking my glass against hers. "I almost feel bad for him." Emily arched a brow. "Almost. He got exactly what he deserved." Later that night, as I walked through my penthouse, the one James had assumed belonged to Emily, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. This wasn't about revenge. It was about proving that I had built something lasting, something real. While James had been chasing shortcuts to success, I had been creating it. My phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. "Divorce papers filed, given the evidence, he's not contesting anything, it's over." I exhaled slowly, then turned back to the cityscape. Tomorrow, the headlines would run. Morgan Industries owner reveals identity, exposes corporate espionage attempt. The PR team had the press releases ready, the world would finally know the truth. But for tonight, I simply stood there, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of finally, completely, being myself. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than I was. James had wanted a woman who could match his ambitions. He just hadn't realized he had married someone who had already surpassed them. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to trade up, he had lost everything, to the woman he had underestimated all along. I smiled, taking one last sip of champagne. I had a global empire to run. And this time, I was doing it from the top floor, where I belonged.